Marcus Simeon with the Texas Rangers. Welcome to the Texas Rangers Baseball Podcast with Jeff and John.
Okay, guys, and joining us for our very first studio edition. He was on the very first podcast we did when we launched this thing, the Texas Ranger Baseball Podcast. Now he's in for the first studio one. It's the president of baseball operations for the Texas Rangers, Jon Daniels. John, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm impressed by your setup here, guys.
Well, I mean, I had nothing to do with it, but the people who did have done a great job. Mostly Jay, who you just met.
Yeah.
He's the brains behind this one, and
the whole setup's legit.
Yeah, and we do a Frogs Day show and some other shows here, so it's pretty awesome. But
when you invited me, I thought it was be more like a Wayne's World, like your parents' basement, kind of a setup. So this is very impressive.
Well, good. I mean, I guess we got couches over there if you want to switch it up. Just do a little pop. So like John mentioned, JD was our first guest for our very first podcast, and so there's some symmetry here, but also the Rangers are off today, and he just happened to have some free time and no meetings, no roster moves today that you have to plan. Yeah. So good, easy day, and so thanks for making the drive from Arlington.
No, let's be honest. He walked up to me Monday and said, "We're still on, right? We're still
on."
Is
that how it went?
I'm going to get to it because he was all excited.
Well,
my social calendar, I want to make sure it's lined up.
All right. So we're 5 games in. Mm-hmm. How do you like your ball club?
We were talking about this a little bit yesterday. It's like on one hand, obviously we're 1-4 right now. There's that in and of itself is no good, right? You want to be on the other side of that. The other piece is we've been in every game. You can make a legitimate case. A few things break, both of our doing and then just some luck, and we could be 4-1 or 5-0. So I think we've played well enough to be the record would be better. I think the game's been entertaining. The guys have been very competitive. We've got to obviously, find a way to close out some of these games when we have these opportunities. But I think I think we're on the right path there.
I haven't shown up to the ballpark yet and been like, the Rangers have no chance tonight.
Right.
Whereas last season I did that pretty much the whole second half.
Right, and even going in, Toronto, extremely tough place to play. Loaded club. They added some big dollar pitching to go with this homegrown, a really impressive lineup. Our guys played well there. Yeah,
but I know Ohtani's coming to town and he's the MVP, and Mike Trout, holy cow, what a player! But god dang, Vladimir Guerrero, that was frightening. Every time he stepped into the box, it was frightening.
He's one of those guys that obviously I never played at any sort of significant level, but when you see like pitchers out on the mound, they're only 60 feet away from some of these guys, and with a bat in their hands, and you're like the fear factor of standing on the mound that close to a few of these guys. He's one of them. I mean, it's unbelievable.
He hit the ball hard every time.
He doesn't miss.
Every time.
Yeah. Good pitch, bad pitch. He's putting it forward with some velocity.
Well, his dad did that.
Yeah. How come Vlad Guerrero with the Guerrero ties for that 1 year? How come he's not a Texas Ranger?
One magical year.
So, John and I were talking about this. I don't know that we're going to have a true feel for how good a team is, any team, for maybe until May, just because spring training was short, pitchers are building up, bullpens are getting used a lot, hitters didn't get all their at-bats. How hard is it for you guys to evaluate right now?
There's a piece of that. I mean, I think your point on, especially May, given that even just the rules are going to be different, right? I mean, we're not getting to like traditional rosters until that point, and in a lot of cases, starters won't be built up until the end of it. Especially now John Gray going to miss one start and come back. Hopefully, I think we're expecting him back next week in Seattle, but his build-up has been cut back even further a little bit. So it's a challenge. At the same time, like I think some of the more systematic things we're trying to put in place, the quality at bats, kind of the offensive plan, the usage of the pen. I mean, I think those things we can start to draw some conclusions on and see where we're at. It's always evolving, but I don't think we have to wait till May to do any sort of evaluate.
Well, I guess traditionally, like Leody Taveras struggled last year, got sent out on like April 27th, and if you go back to 2014, Odor had the really bad beginning, got sent out I think like May 6th, somewhere around there. So just kind of wondering like, how is the leash the same length, or do you have to make a move sooner? Maybe if you see a guy that's just like, he didn't get enough spring.
Well, I think in those cases when you have a young player that's just so underwater and that, they really need a reset, and you feel like the mental side of it is holding them. Like a lot of times, some of our best coaches are at the big league level. You want them to be with our guys. However, if they're just so overwhelmed at the big league level, you're just like that the the environment is not conducive to allowing them to make those changes. That's why I think we made some of those early moves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming then that I remember famously Ian Desmond started 4 for 46 one year and then was an all-star.
Right.
I'm assuming that you're not worried about Marcus Simeon's 2 for 22 or 21, whatever it is.
There are plenty of things I worry about. Marcus isn't one of them.
Yeah.
No, he's not seriously not a factor there. I mean, I do think that the transition into the season and all that, it can affect everybody differently, but I'm not worried about Marcus.
He strikes me as like obviously a leader, but like just talking to him, he's like there's a presence just when you talk to him, and the way he delivers and the things he says. I know that you expect him to mash home runs and be a huge guy on the field, but it seems like off the field he's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that just so consistently about him, or we heard that leading up to when we signed him, and then since the kind of the reviews, whether it was from Nick Hundley, who now works with us, or Bob Melvin and people in Oakland or Toronto, or people who've been around him, like just the presence, the maturity, the self-confidence. I mean, I think it's a real stabilizing force for any team, but especially for a young team, for guys that are coming up and kind of have a little bit of an anchor in the clubhouse. There's a lot of Michael Young there where
Sure.
Michael could have had a slow start or a hot start, had a bad day or a good day. He's the exact same guy every day.
Yeah.
As somebody who dealt with him, he stood up and answered the questions if he went for 0 for 4, 4 for 4, the cliche deal, but he truly was that guy.
Yeah.
And always accountable, and I think Marcus has a lot of that to him.
Yeah, and this is a young team. I know Marcus and Corey have been there.
Yeah.
Cole Calhoun's been there, but I mean, this is Brad Miller's been there. Okay, but
Sure.
This is a young team, and especially in the bullpen, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we tried. I think we wanted to kind of find that balance between obviously making improvements needed on a host of levels, but also leaving ample opportunity for some of these young big league guys to establish themselves, guys that we think have futures, and so that's where I think the leadership piece is huge, right? And giving these guys some guidance as they go through it.
What we were at the lighter start, John and I, and don't want to put him in the major leagues after three Double-A innings, but he's part of a crop of guys that should be making their way into onto the major league roster at some point in the next year or two. But like you said, you have young guys who are here now trying to. It seems like there are tough decisions ahead. A lot of maybe healthy decisions that a good team needs to make. But it seems like you guys are gonna have some stuff to sort through.
We're excited about it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good things to sort through and bad things to sort through, and that's a good one. First off, that whole group has a ton of talent. They got makeup. They've got all the things you want to see. The ingredients, they've got to do it, right? They've got to go out and perform and execute. There are, from a number standpoint, a depth of the talent standpoint. That's where the excitement really comes in, where obviously Jack or a few others will kind of draw more attention than others, but the depth of the group is exciting to where, if somebody does have a setback or an injury or whatever the case may be, there's still competition. There's still that wave coming. But it is going to be some good decisions in terms of managing the roster, in terms of, as we get into, we're not there yet, but as we get into a situation of considering trades for, the right pieces, long-term pieces on the club, and having to make those calls. And so I think our internal evaluation is going to be as big of a focus this season as anything.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was you who told me there are two commodities in baseball. There's cash money and there's prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you guys have never been shy about upgrading the roster at deadlines and even in the off season. So all these guys they may all be major leaguers, but it's not necessarily going to be all with you guys.
No, I mean, and And that's by design, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately, the best teams are able to make those trades because they have the talent, but also because they make good decisions and evaluating their own. And it's tough because you say there is an emotional component to it, and we are invested in these players,
Absolutely.
and we're in their homes, and we make commitments to their families, and we've seen them grow, and you don't, quite frankly, you don't want to trade any of them.
Right.
Ultimately, our goal is to win World Series, and to do that, we're going to have to make some of those tough calls down the line.
How hard is it to make a trade? Like you guys, I'm guessing the Kiner-Falefa trade was hard because of what a homegrown guy who's like
the emotional piece,
kind of grown into what he is, maybe maximizing his talent, and a guy who was a vital component of the team the last 2 years to send him on his way, and Jose Trevino too.
So I think when first of all, absolutely challenging. I mean, Izzy was a kind of a off-radar high school draft at a Hawaii, not a known guy, and doesn't hit a pro home run until he's in big league spring training. And
I remember that.
And then he kind of develops confidence, and obviously we played him all over, quite literally all over, and established himself as a Gold Glove defender and energy and all that. I think when we signed Corey and we signed Marcus, it was with the understanding that these are. We didn't know 100% it was going to be Izzy, but these are the decisions that are coming down the line when you have the depth in the infield. And then it was interesting, we got a bunch of calls immediately after we signed those two on Izzy. And so so the Twins deal actually kind of started the day before the lockout.
Right.
We just felt like, let's not rush into it. It was too quick. Like we didn't really have a chance to talk to Izzy. We didn't want to make a trade at the buzzer and not be able to speak to these players. And so we said, let's tap the brakes. Let's reassess once this thing's over. And then it picked up steam pretty quickly thereafter.
How hard was the lockout for you? Because you guys signed these 4 players and then nada.
Well, it gave us a ton of time to address things and tend to things that might not have gotten the attention otherwise, right? You really, with some new leadership in the development side, new coaches in the big league side, we had more time to get them together, and that was a real silver lining. Plus, our minor league players, off roster players, benefited a ton. Some of the big league guys that especially guys coming back off injuries that we couldn't really get our arms around. That was challenging, and there was some things, some similarities to summer of 2020, the COVID, and we all had to go home and kind of wait. It's like after a certain number of Zoom calls to kind of plan and do your best to anticipate what was coming. It was like, are we just having a call to have a call at this point? And so that part was challenging. Listen, like anybody, I think downtime, was the first time I can ever remember where I was able to set the phone down and I wasn't worried I was missing something, because I knew there quite literally nobody was allowed to call me, and vice versa. So that part was nice for a week or two, and then it got old.
Yeah, and I just wonder, what do you think the lockouts had a lasting impact on fans? Because you guys didn't sell out your home opener, which hadn't happened in 25 years, and but it's not just you. Like the Braves didn't sell, and the defending world champions didn't sell out their home opener. And I just wonder, do you think there's a hangover? Yeah,
I do. I mean, I think it's somewhat inevitable, right? I mean, it was a black eye. I mean, there's no other real way to describe it. It was, our fans were the short term. They were the ones that lost the most in this, and that's especially coming off of COVID. The 60-game season, and then last season with limited fans, and in most cities in the league. The timing of it was really unfortunate. Not that everyone had a great time, but it was just a compounding effect, and I feel like our fans kind of had to wear it. And so, I think anything we can do as an industry to bend over backwards and make ourselves more available, more responsive to our fans' needs. We should do it at all times. We have to do it right now. The opening day thing, I don't know. It's a Monday. It
wasn't supposed to be opening day.
I think Yankees, obviously, that Thursday was going to be a sellout.
For sure.
But there's no denying that we did some damage to the goodwill in the sport.
Yeah. Well, John?
Yeah, I always do the fun stuff here, and you guys know when we had John on last time, I always do the fun stuff because Jeff does all the baseball hard-hitting stuff. So, I wanted to last time we had you on, you talked about when you were in college, you were just like a sports nerd. You and AJ and you guys. I'm kind of that sports nerd now myself, as I played when I was younger, but I wasn't good I was mediocre at best. But I'm really nerdy about front office and what you guys do and how you do it. What's your daily routine like? When does it start at home?
Yeah.
When's it start? What are you up, eating breakfast? You got to get kids off or you're at the office? What do you do?
So I usually get up about 6:30, 6:45, and we've 3 kids to get off to school, all at different schools right now. So my wife Robin and I sometimes one will just get up, and most days we both get up and kind of get them out the door. Try to get some sort of workout in, a short run or a little workout or whatever. Sometimes my son and I will work out together in the mornings. And I usually get to the office around 10-ish. I'm sure the guys in the office are like 11. There's some days it's 9:30.
Yeah.
Pat myself in the back. And then kind of go from there. I mean, obviously it depends. The team home, team on the road, in season, off season, draft coming up, trade window coming up. All those things kind of affect it pretty significantly. And that's one of the, I think, challenging, fun but also challenging things. Like no 2 days are alike during the year, because of all those variables. It keeps it fun, but it's hard to settle into routines. It's hard to make plans with friends or family and things like that, and finding that balance is a little bit of a challenge.
Has Chris Young helped with that? Having somebody else to maybe take a little load off of you?
For sure. We try to, communicate who's got kind of what going on, at the office, who's got what going on at home, and try to make sure that it was one of the things that he and I talked about when he was considering joining us was will we be able to kind of find that balance, right, and or help each other find it. Somebody told me a long time ago, said like, balance is that the idea of balance is the goal, but balance shouldn't be your goal because you're never going to find it.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to hold yourself back and think you're constantly failing. But I think if your family knows and people that you care about know that you're making an effort, you're making an effort, that's about as good as you can do.
Well, and you got to take into consideration, you're saying you get to the office at 10, but if it's a home game, you're usually there till late in the evening. And on the road, is it different? I mean, when you go on the road, how often do you go on the road?
Less than I used to.
Because Chris goes more now, I assume.
I mean, we both go, occasionally, maybe once a month or so. One city or maybe 2 cities a month. Right. Paul Kruger's going to do a lot of travel this year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In his role, Josh Boyd does a little. Ross may do a little bit. Some of it too is it kind of depends on where you're at in the schedule, and if you have upcoming moves. Woody now in year 4, pretty comfortable. Kind of, if he needs to make a move, we don't necessarily need one of us there. So there'll be some trips where there is no front office representative on the road. I enjoy it because I think it's time with the staff. You get you can really get some good time with the staff. That there's a few people, families on the road, staff or players, but for the most part, guys have more time on the road to get feedback from and things like that. So I do enjoy that piece.
Are you home or on the road for the trade deadline? I haven't looked that far ahead.
I don't remember, honestly. I think we're home this year.
Oh, that's good.
I think we're home.
Well, he's already promised us that we'll be in office with him that morning.
Right. You guys can come here.
Yeah, so we'll
just set up headquarters.
We just set up right here, and we'll do it right here. Hey, what's one of the most common myths about your job or Chris's job? What's one of the most common myths that people don't understand?
Interesting. Well, so I don't know. I don't know what the myths are, but I think one of the things that we really try to do is give. We're involved in kind of setting the philosophy and setting the vision and kind of direction and where we're going. We really try to give our people the ability to do their jobs, and so, even back when Wash was manager, there was this perception like I was right in the lineup, and it just was never the case.
Yeah, it wasn't true. Yeah,
I mean, we discuss things for sure, but then ultimately Woody makes those calls, and we'll discuss like how different roles and how guys are going to be utilized, in the draft, certainly the first round pick is kind of more of an organizational decision. As you move down the line, like Kip is largely making those calls with his team, and so I think the myth that the kind of the Wizard of Oz puppeteer that we're one or two people are making every decision is not. It's truly like there's a huge organization, a big team of people that we trust to make those calls.
And see, he said it right here, and I've known that for a long time, and people still don't think. They think people just run it like a puppet up there. And I've noticed, like, you know what? He's not setting the lineup every day, no matter what you think. Chris has that job. That's what he gets paid to do, is to make that lineup up and do that. Who was one of your big mentors in the job that you're doing now? Who was a mentor for you?
A couple. I mean, John Hart for sure. Hired me I was 23 years old. Well, I was 24 years old, and I joined the organization at a time when it was kind of a good amount of turnover and some kind of it was not a real stable situation because of that. He trusted me early on. He gave me a ton of opportunity. I learned as much from him just by doing.
Right.
Josh Burns, who's an executive VP with the Dodgers now and has been the GM with San Diego and Arizona before. He was the assistant GM in Colorado when I got my internship, and he hired me there. And then and Thad Levine. Thad obviously assistant GM here for a long time. People might look at it as he worked kind of when I was the GM, but the reality is like he trained me. I was an intern in Colorado, and that whole group was great. They didn't treat me like I had to do coffee runs and airport runs and things that interns do. But at the end of that, I would I'd deliver the lunch, and they'd come in and sit in the back of the meeting, and they'd explain stuff to me and more informally get my take on things. So I think they taught me in a lot of ways to kind of be collaborative and how to treat people well and include them.
Okay, well, let's go off of baseball just for more fun stuff. What's your favorite type of food? What do you like to eat? You Italian guy?
I'm gonna guess sushi.
I do like steak, but I'd go Asian. And I know there's a host of different options there, but I can go pretty much any Asian direction. Yeah.
So whether it's hibachi or you just go get some egg rolls or go.
I took you to Saigon Kitchen.
That was
in
good.
spring training.
That's a good spot. Yeah.
That's the Rangers dining headquarters, I think, front office dining.
That was really good, by the way. I'm good with any Asian
surprise is a little limited, but that Saigon is like a legit spot anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what's your favorite home cooked meal? And is it your wife that cooks it? Does mom cook something you always love when you go home? What's the who cooks it, and what's your favorite one?
It would be Rob. It would be my wife. I'm trying to think of the best. There's a few of them. Our schedule. She's a great cook. Okay. She's a great cook. I think our schedules and and 3 kids, including 2 teenagers in every direction, so it's not as frequent as it was.
Same thing, 3 kids. So I know.
Yeah, I'll go just kind of a classic like steaks and the.
Now, do you get on the grill sometimes and get them going?
When she's not around.
Okay.
Yeah. Robin has kind of like forbid me from touching everything. But I won't butcher a steak, but everything else is fair game to be butchered. Yeah.
Now, do you have like a guilty pleasure? Like I shouldn't, but I love Diet Coke, and I always got to have one up in the press box, and it's kind of do you have some kind of chocolate or something that's like your guilty pleasure?
I'll just kind of go and wait. I don't have one thing. I do like chocolate or dark chocolate or ice cream, probably with the kids, probably that'd be the one. But I'll go in waves where I'm like real, strict and good about it, and then other times like anybody else where
you're
you're
working out every day. That's what I finally lost some weight, so I'm happy to be better.
Every day's a stretch, but yeah, I try.
I've worked out with John before. We did a 90-minute Orange Theory class.
That's right.
Before the 2018 winter meetings. It was brutal, and we were sore. So we're walking around I think it was in San Diego. We were just, our legs were
So you're like an animal on that thing.
Oh yeah,
huh?
I'm a real animal.
You are.
Well, we stayed together when we were when we got that first week that we were there before the lockout was done. Yeah, he was up every morning going off to the gym, so I was just walking around that neighborhood we were staying in.
Yeah, I got a little injury right now. I'm not as much an animal.
See, I get injured getting out of bed, so I can't do that. Okay, what would your wife say is the one thing you do that annoys her the most?
One?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. She just told me yesterday. She said, and there was a lot to choose from, but it was. She said I'm a bad sleeper. She said she calls me like I'm like a fish, like kind of flopping out of the water, and she said I keep turning over and pull the blanket off her and stuff. So she literally just told me that yesterday.
Apparently, I'm a loud eater.
You are kind of a loud eater.
My wife and I would sit. We had desks across from each other for the entire pandemic.
Right.
And she told me one day that I'm a loud eater, and like if she's on a Zoom call, she's
telling you to get out of the room.
Yeah, and so during spring training, she separated our desks.
Is it like with your mouth, or are you like clanking the?
I think it's when I inhale. I think maybe I inhale when I eat.
Breathe in.
Because I do eat fast, but maybe it's like a. But I don't smack my lips or anything. I'm very polite, but she's like, "You're terrible." So.
I think this one's probably going to be an answer that he answers that you and I would agree with. Who do the kids fear more, you or mom?
I think Robin. I think. I mean, we kind of like have our different areas that I think they're. I'm like OCD about certain things, but she's just more present than I am. So I think she's has to address a lot more things than I do, and I can be a little Disney dad at times. Swoop in and she rolls her eyes at Yeah, exactly.
Well, we always end on what's something nobody knows about you, but before we do that, I want to do one deal, and I kind of always wanted to know this. And how it goes from there. Like, let's take, now that it's done, the Gallo trade. So when you're doing a Gallo trade, you get in touch, the Yankees reach out to you, whatever happens, they start putting out names. I know right at your fingertips you can pull up a lot, but who do you go to in the scouting that you're like, we need to get eyes on this guy, or tell me about this guy? Where does it go from there? They've called, they want Joey, and you said, what do you got? They've thrown some names out. Mm-hmm. Who are you going to find out about those guys?
So Mike Parnell is our director of professional scouting, and so all of the pro scouts, and we have I forgot the number, but 10 or so guys out in the field that report up through Mike, and then Mike will kind of work with the R&D group, Ryan Murray and his team, kind of combining the scout takes with the analysts' information, and he'll typically Mike is kind of the one that's presenting. Right. Kind of the initial list for us to go through, and some of the target names. And Mike last summer reported up to Ross. Okay. Ross Fenstermaker. Ross now over. We moved him over to development and international, and Mike reports to Josh Boyd now. So typically, last summer it was Ross and Mike were kind of leading those meetings with the rest of our group.
So there are also guys when a name's there that they'll say, not that one. Go this way or that way.
And it's kind of a starting point, right? And so, I mean, these things aren't like, they're motion pictures. They're not still photos.
Sure.
The players are evolving. They're human beings. They're learning. They're growing. And so I think a lot of the things that we're putting it through the filters of like, all right, what are we good at from a development standpoint?
Right.
What is the team that they're coming from good at from a development standpoint? What can we expect? Are there any, did they have any off-field issues that might have held him a personal tragedy, a loss, loss in his life, an injury, obviously, things that did he not start playing baseball till a little bit later? Does he have like a little more of a development path? So I think we're trying to always look at it through that lens of like, what is this player today, but what is how much growth realistically and development can we expect going forward? And so. Again, that's the initial list they're putting together, but we chew it up pretty good, ask a ton of questions. We go back to the guys that knew him, our amateur scouts, Kip and his team.
Right.
What kind of background we're calling, college coaches, who they worked with in the offseason and what facilities, trying to gather as much and trying to put together as complete a picture as possible.
But in like 72 hours, or in some cases. I know the Joey talks probably started well before then, but like... Right.
Yeah, I mean, you make those decisions in real time. It kind of gets narrowed down, but we try to have certainly higher frequency talks in the off season and the trade time, but we try to have like weekly calls or where we're trying to stay fresh on potential partners on a regular basis, and we'll start talking about like next year's free agent class. This probably May or June. We'll start because you don't want it to be just a one. You don't want to make a decision in a 72-hour window with no background, obviously.
Right.
And I'm assuming too, before if you got a player that's probably going to be available, you probably already know some teams that might have a fit for that player. Are you already getting some people? Hey, we might be the Reds organization. Maybe we need to go look at some stuff over there because they might be a player, or the Yankees, and you're already out kind of before talks begin. Maybe you're thinking there might be a fit.
Yeah. So using the Joey situation as the example, right? We set out. We knew that there was a good chance we were going to trade. We were going to trade him if we didn't accept him. And that was where our head was.
Right.
We figured we would get across a threshold where we needed to get, and we did. And so Mike and the group kind of recommended, hey, these are the teams we're going to focus on and get extra looks at. We'll do our org coverage in these other spots. We'll make sure we get extra looks and attention at these teams. And those are the teams we spent the most time on. But we want to be nimble, whereas if the team, somebody got hot, in July and jumped in on, or they had an injury in the outfield and they jumped in on Joey, we wanted to be able to
be prepared. Right.
And not say, well, we can't consider them because we didn't have.
We've only done work over here,
Yeah, we don't have the luxury. You only have 29 partners, right? So you can't rule anybody out when they may be the most motivated and have the best return.
That always makes it fun, too. And I do some contract stuff in my work, but when you have a little leverage that there's another team on board, that always helps. Anyway, okay, so what is something nobody knows about you? I don't know if you've listened to some of these, but so let's give some fun examples. Some of your players.
Brock Burke sleepwalking. You knew that.
You knew about that. So that was, I discovered
Davis
that
Wenzel got his finger cut off.
When he was 5. It wasn't this week. It was when he was 5.
4 or 5. And then
Jack Leiter and the peanut butter thing is still one. I talked to his mother and sisters at the game Saturday. They said it's been from the time. She goes, I always used to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when we would travel or go out to see Dad. He couldn't stand it. He loves peanuts. Can't stand peanut butter. Really? I asked him, if you were on a deserted island and you only had peanut butter, are you going to starve to death? And he goes, probably.
Wow.
I don't know if we would have taken it if we did.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
You're going to get him on the trading block.
So what's something that nobody knows about Jon Daniels? Daniels. Sorry, I can't put that on.
I mean, I don't know. I've definitely OCD in certain. I think we probably all do. It kind of manifests in some weird ways.
What's the most OCD thing you do?
2 things stand out. One's kind of bizarre / embarrassing. The other one's just bizarre. But I have to wear certain underwear on flights. Yeah, certain underwear.
You heard it here.
I've flown a bunch, so I'm here. Everything's good, right?
Yeah.
It's working, so it's
okay.
fail-proof.
Good.
That's great.
And the other one is when I get a cup of coffee, at Starbucks, you get the coffee, you get the liner, to keep it from burning your hand or whatever.
Right.
And then the coffee has a seam down the side. The cup has a seam down the side of it.
Sure.
So you have to line up both seams.
That's not weird.
On one side, and then have the sip opener right on the front.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Otherwise, you don't know what could happen.
Jeff, anything else before we let him get back to work or go home and do the
Yeah, he's got an off day. Right? You're semi-off day? Go home. Shoot.
Well, John, we can't thank you enough for joining us again, for coming on here today. Guys, that's Jon Daniel, the president of baseball operations. When we come back, we're going to get into the minor leagues and talk about them.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. That was fun.